Hello and welcome, dear friends, far and wide, to Whisks and Legends Halloween Special. As you can clearly tell by my creepy decor. And today we're retelling two Japanese folk tales. They just fit right in this time of year, friends. No better place to go than Japanese folk tales. Both tales today are either based off real life persons or practices that indeed take place in ancient Japan. And I can't wait to get into it. It's gonna be such a good time. Oh yes, and we're making a matcha cake. Because the matcha are so spooky, friends. Matcha, cha, cha, cha. Right, let's get right into it, shall we? So we begin today's tale in 17th century Japan, where a marriage has taken place between a woman named Oiwa and a man, this guy, named Tamiya Iemon. This match was originally not only beneficial, but quite powerful because both Iemon and Oiwa's father were samurais. However, things took quite a turn. Oh dear! Oh my god, half of that went on my bench when the lord that both of these samurais were serving died. And this left Iemon and Oiwa's dad as masterless samurais, known as ronins. And for context, samurais were always expected to serve and be tied to a specific leader. And when that leader is gone, either by death or downfall, this meant that the samurais, or ronins as they now would be, would completely lose their privileges and their social status. Which meant that ronins were left without a salary and they were looked down upon in society. So why didn't they look for a new leader to join? Well, they did. However, during the Edo period, there was a long peace in that time, so not only was it not necessary for them to gain new samurais, but there was also political instabilities and legal restrictions that prevented them from joining new leaders. And also, in many cases, ronins were not allowed to join a new leader without the consent from their previous leader, which was very rarely given, you know, when they're dead. It was a case where many ronins, oh no, would perform a seppuku because that was considered to be an honorable death, and it was much preferable than living with such dishonor. But the ones who decided to live were often shunned by society and often resorted to either low-paying jobs or criminals. They turned to a life of crime. Usually much better than this. I don't know what is going on with my phalanges today. And in the case of our lovely family we are discussing today, this meant that their family had fallen into deep financial hardship and they were struggling to make ends meet. Oiwa was known to be quite beautiful and kind and devoted to her family. She took care of the home and even worked at a tea shop to help make ends meet. Despite this, Iemon and Oiwa did not have a very happy marriage because Iemon, fuzzy butthole of a man, for all the virtues that Oiwa was known for, Iemon was known for the opposite. He was cruel and prideful and lazy, a swindler and a thief. He was currently working as an umbrella maker, a job that he deemed to be embarrassing and demeaning post-samurai status. And it was said that he frequently stole money from his employer and misappropriated public funds. One day, Oiwa decided She had had enough of her husband and planned to leave him and return back to her family home. And Iemon, the swindler and the thief, he followed after her, cloaked in the shadows. But he was stopped by Oiwa's father, Yotsuya Samon. A bit French there. Samon. Yotsuya Samon. For quite some time now, Samon had been seeing the dynamic between his daughter and Iemon. He was mistreating her, how unhappy his daughter was, and the lack of care between the two, and the despicable character of Iemon's criminal ways. And he had had enough, so he confronts Iemon, demanding that he leaves his daughter, that they separate and divorce. And Iemon, he was aghast, offended, outraged, flabbergasted by such a demand. Iemon drew his sword at his father-in-law, and he took out Samon, leaving him on the side of the road to rot. And when Iemon found Oiwa, he spilled lies like the blood that he had shed, that some ruffian had robbed her father and then killed him. What is this town coming to? He doesn't know what happened, but what he does know is that he loves her. And he dropped to his knees, clasping her hand, begging to reconcile their marriage and for her to not leave him. He'll be the one to avenge her father in her honor. And the Oscar goes to... Well, I joke, but it seemed to have worked because Oiwa agrees to stay with him and come back home. A decision that she would sooner, rather than later, come to regret. After some time, Oiwa bears a child for Iemon, a son no less. An occasion that should be joyous was overshadowed by how hard the times were for them in particular. The days were a struggle and money was scarce. Even worse, after this birth, Oiwa became quite sick, and Iemon quickly became resentful. He was tired of the poverty, tired of caring for his ailing wife and child, taking care of his family. This isn't what he signed up for. And with his wandering eyes, searching for a better life, he notices a beautiful young woman in his neighborhood. This woman's name was Ume, and she was the granddaughter of a wealthy doctor named Ito Kihei. And for reasons beyond me, friends, this attraction was mutual. Ume liked what she saw in Iemon, and she told her grandfather, "I want to marry this guy." And Kihei, the doctor grandfather guy, he's like, "You want to marry this guy? Alright then, we got a wife to take care of." And Iemon, well, he is fully on board. "Let me help you conspire, friends. Give me your wealth, grandfather-in-law." Now Kihei, if you remember, he's a doctor. I've only mentioned it a couple times. He's got some trickery up his sleeve. And he gives Iemon a cream or an ointment, and he tells Iemon to tell his wife that it is medicine to help her with her sickness. Believing her husband, Oiwa dips her fingers into the cream, lathers it all over her face. But as she did, her skin began to flake, ripping and tearing down her face in streaks and oozing blood. Most famously of all, her eye began drooping, as the medicinal cream was not a cream at all, but was in fact a poison. A poison that has left her once beautiful face severely disfigured. Let me whip up these egg whites. Let's get whipping, and I'll be back. We're back, friends. Did not pick the most appropriate size bowl for such a task, but oh well. Too late now. Oh. I actually need to be gentle with this. No stabbing today, Laura. Okay. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, indeed. Our villainous trio, Yaemon, Kihei, and Ume, they gotta reconvene. Our plan has taken an unexpected turn because Oiwa is still very much alive. Disfigured, yes, but alive. They all agree that the best plan from here would probably be just for Yaemon to get a divorce. Why didn't I think of that sooner? You know, just like what Oiwa's father suggested at the beginning of this tale. Alas, the scheming continues. Oh, that was not working. However, one cannot divorce the other without a valid reason, and finding your wife inconveniently sick and hideous, even if it was by your own hand, is not a valid excuse, okay? Yaemon meets up with his friend Takoetsu. That bowl slam was not intentional, but quite appropriate. And Takoetsu, where do I begin with Takoetsu? He had quite a reputation for his erotic obsession, should we say, particularly with prostitutes. And so Yaemon sets up a plan with Takoetsu on a night that Oiwa would be alone, for Takoetsu to break into his house, take Oiwa by force, so then Yaemon can claim infidelity as his grounds to divorce her. Tell you what, this man is turning me into a vengeful spirit, and I'm still alive. So it was on the night that was prearranged by this duo from hell. Takoetsu breaks. Gonna let the bird tell its story because clearly it has something to say. He breaks. Let me just get this cake in its tray and then I'll continue with this story because the recipe made it sound a lot simpler than it is. Let me get this bowl out of the way. So, Takoetsu, he breaks into this home, right? And thankfully, when he finds Oiwa, he is so horrified by her appearance that he could not go through with the act. But our poor girl Oiwa, she's still sitting here like, who the hell is this man? Why is he here? Get out of my house! Interestingly enough, Takoetsu is like, Oiwa, take a seat. Let me tell you the tea. So Takoetsu tells all. He tells her about Yaemon's treachery, his plans to divorce and remarry, the poison cream, even that Yaemon killed her father. No stone left unturned. But that's not enough. No, not for our Takoetsu. He gives Oiwa a mirror to look at herself, for she had not known how she physically looked after taking this poison cream. Just gotta kick them when they're down, you know? When she saw what she looked like, she became hysterical. She snatched up her comb, vigorously brushing her hair over her face to hide the disfigurement, Ringu style. But as she did, her hair fell in her lap in bloody clumps, leaving her scalp partially bald. And in this madness and despair, she grabs a sword and tries to flee the room. But as she did, her sword punctured her throat, killing her. It was here on the floor her last dying words were a curse, repeating Yaemon's name over and over and Yaemon, Yaemon, Yaemon. Right, let's get this in the oven. Now we move on to the sweet, sweet vengeance for our Oiwa. It's safe to say, after witnessing this horror show, Takoetsu, he gaps it okay. Not my circus, not my monkey. Oiwa's body was discovered by their household servant Kohei. Head bowed and hands clasped. He tells Yaemon that Oiwa is dead. Yaemon's reaction, you may wonder? He smiled, he laughed, his hands were in the air, exclaiming his gratitude. The man was one step away from frolicking down the stairs and dancing in the kitchen, I tell you. And Kohei, he was watching this act of joy play before him. This was not a good look, was it? In fact, it was rather suspicious. So Kohei, he was giving quite a severe side eye, questioning his master's innocence. And Yaemon, he noticed, right? He noticed this bombastic side eye. So he drew his sword. Where is my sword? Drew his sword and took out Kohei. You know, the devil works hard, but Yaemon works harder. Now, to deal with all these dead bodies that are rapidly increasing in his home, Yaemon nailed Oiwa and Kohei on opposite sides of a door and then threw them into a river. If their bodies were never found, Yaemon would lie and claim that they were having a romantic affair and ran away together. And in the event that their bodies would be discovered, he would just say that they were lovers who had committed a double suicide. It's foolproof, really. Who needs the logistics when they're both hammered to the door? Semantics, I tell you. However, Oiwa, she was furious and she wanted revenge. Now that all these dead people are out of the way and no longer causing any issues, Yaemon and Ume quickly get married. Love and money is in the air, friends. And on their wedding night, whilst laying next to each other in bed, Yaemon looks down at his beautiful new wife. But his smile drops as her face became disfigured, her skin ghostly pale, and her eyes started drooping. Now, he recognized this face, this ghostly figure. As it crawls closer to him, it was the ghost of Oiwa reaching for him. Yaemon, he scrambles out of bed, okay, and he grabs his sword and he slashes wildly at the ghost. When the ghost started screaming and crying, Yaemon stops, horrified to see his new bride, Ume, mortally wounded and close to death. He runs out of the room to find Kihei. He's a doctor, he can help. He barges into Kihei's room, pleading for medical assistance to save Ume. But as Kihei turns around to face Yaemon, his face morphs into the same disfigured phantom that he saw just before of Oiwa. Yaemon takes his blade and strikes once more, but with a blink, the illusion ends, and his father-in-law lay slain on the ground. Victory dance! My friends, this was just the beginning of Oiwa's torment, for her plans would be relentless and all-pursuing. Her face was appearing in his dreams. It was suddenly projecting on paper lanterns as he walked through during the night, outside, inside, everywhere, hearing her shriek his name over and over. So Yaemon decides he's gotta leave. He's gotta go somewhere else. So he goes to a cabin in the woods, far away from civilization and people. But Oiwa would find him there too. And unable to tell reality from his nightmares, Iemon was driven completely insane, living the rest of his days in isolation and complete madness, turning the tormentor into the tormented. And Oiwa, the once delicate victim, became a powerful, feared avenger. Alright, I think our cake is done. Invert it into a prepared paper towel like this. Roll it with the towel. I actually have no idea what I'm doing. We want to create muscle memory with this cake. So when we roll it later, it's not going to crack and fall apart because we've already trained it in the art of rolling when it was still hot. No! Why did I put this on so weird? I'm going to put this in the fridge to cool. It looks lovely and snug in the refrigerator with my fridge friends. And we can continue with the story. So, the myth has ended. The folk tale of Real Oiwa and the injustices done against her, but she got her sweet revenge. Cheers to that, friends. Cheers to that. Yotsuya Kaidan, the play that the story is from, my sources tell me is one of, if not the most famous Japanese ghost story of all time. And the play itself has been continuously performed in kabuki since 1825 and has been adapted to film over 30 times and is still highly influential in modern horror as inspirations for characters such as Sadako from Ringu and Ju-on the Grudge. And what makes Oiwa special and noticeably stand out in arts and theatre is the famous drooping eye. Speaking of the play, there has been a long-standing superstition that surrounds the performance and the play. Curse of Oiwa. Oiwa, Oiwa, Oiwa. The director and the actors, especially the one playing Oiwa, must visit Oiwa's grave at Myogyoji Temple in Tokyo to pay their respects and ask for her blessings, to keep her spirit calm and to prevent any accidents, injuries, or deaths that have been historically associated with the story's retelling. Now, if you're anything like me, the shrine part may have made you go, "What do you mean there's a shrine? Is this not a ghost story we're discussing? Was this a creation built not to anger a fictional spirit for superstitious reasons? Or, as it turns out, Oiwa was a real person." Oiwa Tamiya lived in the Yotsuya area of Edo, old Tokyo, in the 17th century. Like the ghost story, she was born into a powerful samurai family and married a man named Iemon Tamiya. Unlike the tragic, frightening tale, the historical Oiwa was reportedly a virtuous and devoted wife who worked hard to restore her family's prosperity during financial hardship. After the real Oiwa's death, the shrine became known as Oiwa Inari due to the high regard that locals held for her efforts in restoring the Tamiya family fortunes. And as stated before, the shrine's purpose has also shifted to one of appeasement due to the theatrical superstition. But why Oiwa, a virtuous, devout woman, have her name tied to such a tragic Onryo tale? You may wonder. Well, the simple answer is, it's theatre. Gotta cash in on that drama. Yotsuya Kaidan was written in 1825 at the peak of the Kaidan ghost story culture, and the playwright knew that by using a famous local name from a real life family in a real life location, especially with how positively they are regarded, and blending that with real murders that were happening at that time period, it would make the people flock in, friends. Creating a play that was tragic and shocking and scandalous and terrifying and dramatic. We gotta give him credit, he knew what he was doing. As its cultural impact has lasted 200 years later. Now, friends, it's time to move on to our second spooky story we have today. This one's so messed up, I love it. We will be covering the practice of Hitobashira, the human pillars. And it is exactly like it sounds, friends. I'm so excited to talk about it. It's crazy. And the legend that goes with it, the Haunting of Maruoka Castle. Hitobashira. It sounds like such a cool torture technique, doesn't it? Take him to the Hitobashira. No, Spenny! Let's do the jam first. It's like the blood between the building. No. Our story begins in 1576, during the Sengoku period, when they were constructing the Maruoka Castle, which was being built by Shibata Katsutoyo, who was the nephew of the samurai Shibata Katsue. However, the builders were facing a severe and persistent problem. Regardless of how many times they tried to stack them stones, the castle walls just kept collapsing. There was only one conclusion they could come up to that was causing this problem. It must be that the gods were unhappy with them and they were delaying this process for some reason beyond our mortal minds. And so a vassal came to them and suggested, with his wisdom, that they should perform a human sacrifice to be sealed within the castle's foundation. Surely this will appease the gods. I know, it's quite a jump, isn't it? It was a different time. This type of human sacrifice is called Hitobashira. And Katsutoyo was like, mind blown, of course. Silly me, why didn't I think of such a simple solution? Bring me the peasants. Luckily for them, the most perfect sacrifice came forth. A widowed woman named Oshizu. Oshizu was poor, with 2 children and only 1 eye, and she was willing to be their sacrifice. One condition. That condition was that Katsutoyo, the man that was building the castle, must take one of her children in and make them a samurai to secure their future. Both parties agreed, and soon thereafter, Oshizu stood in the castle foundation beneath the central pillar, with the base stones positioned around her over and over until she was completely covered and slowly crushed to death. Her sacrifice allowed the construction to be successfully completed, and the walls, they held firm, and the castle structure encountered no further problems. However, this is where things take a turn, my friends. Before Katsutoyo could honor this agreement he made with the sacrifice, the lord was transferred to another province, meaning that Oshizu's son was never made into a samurai, and the promise was never fulfilled. Let's try to roll this. The paper towel was a bad idea, friends. I just saw a towel. I just saw a towel. Get off! Oh my god, that's the ugliest scroll I have ever seen. True Halloween horror. I have been defeated by the roll, and this is the best. It's terrible. We're gonna get. And so, the spirit of Oshizu between these castle walls grew angry. and unable to rest from this betrayal, she now haunted the castle grounds, manifesting her sorrow physically. And it is said that every spring an unnatural mist would descend upon the castle grounds dense. The locals began calling it Oshizu Gazumi, which is Oshizu's mist, and the castle was also known, well, is also known with the nickname Kasumigajo, meaning mist castle. And every spring, when the season for cutting algae in the moat around the castle began, her sorrowful spirit would cause a heavy rain that would make the castle's moat overflow. This is known as the rain caused by the tears of Oshizu's sorrow. And they actually made a small tomb. They apparently do make tombs for fictional legendary characters to appease her spirit, and her memory is preserved through handed down poem. The rain which falls when the season of cutting algae comes is the rain reminiscent of the tears of the poor Oshizu's sorrow. Unlike Oiwa, Oshizu was a fictional character for this tale. However, the practice of Hitobashira was very much true. It is a former cultural practice that existed in Japan and other parts of East Asia, where human sacrifices were made by burying them alive or sealing them alive in the foundation of walls or under pillars of large-scale construction projects such as castles, bridges, dams, or levees. This was done to protect the structures from natural disasters like floods or collapses and enemy attacks. The sacrifice person's soul is basically enshrined as a guardian spirit, and the earliest written records of this tradition was found in the Nihon Shoki, which dates back all the way to the 8th century. But there were stories from earlier, such as a famous tale from Emperor Nintoku in the 4th century, who was troubled by a constant river flooding and was told in a dream to sacrifice 2 people to the river gods to stop the devastation and allow this construction to take place. Why are you doing this to me? It was from my dream. Now die. The practice of Hitobashira significantly declined after the 16th century, favoring using clay figures called haniwa rather than real breathing people. It's kind of like the cake cream is entombed in matcha walls. Really works up an appetite, huh? Can't wait after hearing about all this human sacrifice. Typically, those who were sacrificed and became the human pillar often fell upon those that were the most vulnerable in society. In almost all cases, they were the poor, the low status, the low ranked, and women. Since it has the glamour of being a religious honor, often these people would volunteer to be sacrificed or coerced, believing that it would elevate the honor in their family for generations to come. And when they couldn't get someone to volunteer or be coerced to do it, they would do a random or divine selection, and they were almost always from commoners. But get this. This is where it's super interesting, friends. Super interesting. Despite the fact that historians and archaeologists agree that this was a real cultural practice that did take place, whether it was intentionally or ritually, actual, verifiable archaeological proof that bodies were buried specifically in building foundations, such as Oshizu at Maruoka Castle, as we have heard, a maiden at Matsue Castle, Gensuke at Matsue Ohashi Bridge, and a young woman named Ohiji at Osu Castle, amongst many other places. The evidence has been extremely scarce and inconclusive, or perhaps they're hiding something. Alright, should we finally slice this cake? Doesn't look great, does it? It's not my finest. I've got a serrated knife. Should I just press down? Should I keep serrating? Oh god, it's crumbling with the serration. I can't say I'm impressed, but the stories were a fun time. I bet it still tastes good. Well, if there's two things I have learned today, one, cake and horror are an excellent combination. And two, my style of storytelling is completely unsuitable for scary stories. But I hope that you had a good time and have come away learning something new. It seems like the Japanese do love their tales about angry, vengeful women after being cruelly mistreated by the men around them. The cake is tougher than I was expecting because it's so soft here, but on my taste buds it's not the same softness. I'm mainly just eating it for the cream and jam. You know, the ones that didn't need cooking. Oh well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Feel free to subscribe if you would like to, and or comment your requests for any myth, legend or folklore you would like me to cover. I will see you next time. Next time.